Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is a show where you can put our experts to task answering your property related questions. And joining me today is Milesh Lakhani, CEO of Revive Properties Limited. And Milesh is a mentor, developer, investor. Anything else have I missed?
Oh, that'll do.
Good, okay.
Like John, it's tiring thinking about it.
Good to have you on, Milesh, anyway. Thank you for coming. And with Milesh is John Howard, property developer, best-selling author, mentor, investor, and regular contestant, I should say, on our programme.
Contributor.
I think contestant's better.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
It feels like that sometimes.
It does. You're not wrong. You're not wrong there.
Anyway, good to have you, John.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming in. Okay, going to start off with Milesh. Milesh, the new insulation standard requirements are soon to come into force. But frankly, since interest rates have risen, I just don't have the finance or margin over and above the rental income to carry them out. And as far as borrowing is concerned, I'm at the limit. Has the panel any helpful suggestions, I suppose, other than sell the property?
Well, yeah, without being too direct about it, yeah, sell it and find something that does suit the requirements.
Yeah.
But genuinely, that could be an option for you.
Yeah.
I think there are, look into how you can try and arrange your finance better. So some lenders are giving better rates for EPCC and above. So that in the long term could help you. What local authority grants can you get, or interest-free loans could you get to help you with that? Look at your rents. Are your rents competitive? It's just about looking at creative ways that you can try and claw some of that back and look at it as an individual investment, if you like. So if it's going to cost you 10 grand, to make the changes, what are you going to save in your mortgage if you get an EPCC or above? What's your ROI on that 10 grand? And then you make a call. So I think devil's in the detail really a bit.
Yes, I think the extra worry that I would have if I was a landlord is that doing that work is actually going to cause disruption to the tenancy, isn't it? So what do you do with your tenant in the meantime? Are you going to get pushed into finding them alternative accommodation?
There are some exemptions to the rules. If you go on the government website, there are some exemptions. So, for instance, if you have to spend more than, I think, don't quote me on this, but £10,000, I think, then you don't actually have to get it to C.
Right.
Now, for a certain period of time. So the government have tried to be a little bit flexible. And of course, everyone's meant to have C by 2025, aren't they? Is that going to happen?
Well, this is it. And
can't see that
the question said due to come into force.
Yes.
We don't actually know when that's going to happen. So I'm not saying ignore it all, but I would, if I was a betting man, I'd be saying the goalposts would probably move in that they'll band a C as what might be a D today. Who knows?
Well, I think so. And John, you're technically very good at this. I mean,
really?
There are certain...
Thank you. I don't often get a compliment from you. I'll take it. Yeah,
I'm trying to be kind.
I'm just waiting for the punchline, actually.
No, but look. So there's such a myriad of different properties, aren't there? So getting something to a particular grade might not be a sort of defined science, as it were. And if you do the loft, then does everything just go out through the front door?
I totally agree. We've got stock, and some of it's quite dated now. Throughout the UK, and if you get rid of a gas at the moment, if you get rid of a gas boiler, which is what the government want you to do, and you put an electric boiler in, your EPC can go from C to D or D to E because the way it's worked out. Now, how crackers is that? So the whole thing is a mess, and the government need to sort it out, to be honest with you.
Well, I can remember a time when if you turned up at a property to view it and looked towards buying, and it was all electric, you'd just say no thanks.
Yeah, well now it's
it's just gone in reverse.
Well, some of the developments we're doing now, I don't know about yourself, but we're putting an electric in. We're not even bothering with gas.
Yeah, we did that on our last one as well.
Yeah.
I think as well the cost of hydrogen boilers is a new buzzword at the moment. I know gas safety engineers who are saying we don't have the training, the infrastructure is not in place, and from our point of view, the costs are too high.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, I agree that it is a challenge. So it's just about trying to be creative, see what's out there. Talk to local landlords as well. There may be opportunity if you club together, you might get better rates on stuff.
They're talking about infrared, aren't they, as well? Which is from the ceiling down or something. It warms you, not the property or something. I don't understand it.
Well, infrared would focus on you, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So there's lots of new things, but all very new, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, till you move where you put your settee, I suppose.
There's smart technology that I've learned of recently where it hooks up to your fuse board, and then it's the smart bit is it knows where you are and it tracks where you are, and then therefore it only heats up the bits that it needs to in the house and sockets and everything else.
How about that? How clever is that?
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. I don't know what the costs are of it, but there are other new technologies out there. It's just about.
Don't live in an old Grade 2 listed house that's got more drafts than anything else. That's the problem.
Although I think Grade 2 might be exempt.
Yeah,
if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Like a lot of things, as we've discussed before, get watered down by the time they get to us.
I think so.
They?
Yeah, that's the
these sort of headline grabbers are all very well.
Yeah, but can they actually do it?
Can they do it?
Can they implementation?
I mean, it's a little bit like, I'm afraid to say, on the rental reform bill. They're saying, well, every single landlord in the country is going to be obliged to join a sort of central computerized register. Well, we saw what happened with COVID, didn't we, with that app?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. I that was exactly my comment when I read some of that. Good luck.
I think that's really interesting. That whole thing about data, what information are other people, lenders, HMRC going to be able to extract from that, and the knock-on implications are could be pretty severe.
Yeah.
Really one to watch.
Really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, there we are. We live in that kind of world at the moment, don't we? I'm afraid.
Looks like it.
All right, John. Do the panel think that the current explosion of housing rents will force the government to bring in rental caps?
Rental caps. Right, we need to go back to 2016 on this, because in 2016, Ireland decided to cap the rents would be a good idea. Yeah, and then in 2019 or 2020, they changed it slightly, but kept the caps in place. And the problem was last year at one point there was only 625 houses in the whole of Ireland to rent. And I don't know if you saw it on the news, but there was massive queues with people wanting to view. Total madness. So what did Scotland do? Brought in rent caps last year temporarily with a 3% uplift for the year. They've now made that permanent as from April, 3% a year. You can apply for more, a bigger uplift with the rent officer, if you can prove that your mortgage has gone up or something. It can go up to 6% a year. Now in Europe, it's very common to have rent caps. Certainly in Holland, we were looking at buying tower blocks in Holland in the 1990s, and in those days, the government set the amount of increase you could have, and some of these blocks were very good value for money because of that reason. So I don't know. Whatever happens in Scotland tends to happen in England, surprisingly. I know it's a different government, but certainly if Labour get in, they're going to look at this, because they are. If you think Michael Gove is slaughtering the landlords as a Conservative, which in my view they have done, you wait till Labour get in. You wait till they get in, because they're all about rental. And I think they'll bring in some sort of rent cap. I think they will. But it's a very difficult thing to do. Very difficult.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, with the backdrop of a national housing shortage, this is a way of drying up the supply.
Totally, I agree with you. Totally.
It's quite bluntly.
I mean,
that's
as it is, landlords are selling up because of all the problems and all the issues that this government brought in. You get a new government, and the thing about a new government, if Labour do get in, is they'll be ballsy to start with, because the first 2 or 3 years they can blame everything on the past government, really, can't they? So for 2 or 3, they haven't got election for 5 years. They can be as brave and as ballsy as they want early on, and they're naive. They're not used to being in business or in government, and they could cause some real trouble.
Well, I can just say it's doing nothing other than drying up the market.
Totally. And that's exactly what it's done in Ireland.
I think what the government would argue is that they've been quite keen for some time on getting rid of what they call accidental landlords.
Yes, I agree with that.
I suppose what you could loosely describe as the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4
Yes.
landlord. You know, I kind of get that in a way. It's hard to collect taxes from a sort of fragmented number
Unprofessional
of people.
setup. Yeah.
Hard to do. Although you will know, John, software going into agencies now is quite precise, isn't it? So deducting overseas landlord taxes and that sort of thing is all matter of fact now, isn't it? Money laundering, all those considerations. But I still think the government would prefer to come away and deal with, you know, a dozen corporations rather than 20,000 landlords.
Totally.
Cue the landlord database, though.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
exactly.
but that's what's coming, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, but the success of this is going to be on its implementation, of course. And we've seen that even the land registry now, people are telling me that in some areas it's taking up to 18 months to register.
It's disgraceful,
a property.
absolutely
We
disgraceful.
had a
If you
sale
want,
delayed last year by 2 months because of land reg.
yeah,
It's a
if you want to
probate.
buy and sell now, it's almost impossible. Quickly,
Yeah.
crazy, absolutely crazy.
But again, I think conveyancing needs looking at.
Well,
We had a discussion program in here, and they were saying that it's only actually about 1 in 4 firms of solicitors that have actually got a full-time conveyancer in the practice.
it's a disgrace.
Well, the problem is with that is that when that person gets an odd property to convey, they're not up to speed with latest legislation, latest
They're not-
requirements,
they're-
lender requirements.
No, they're not, Stephen. And to be fair, the lending requirements on these solicitors now is ridiculous. All the pressure's been put on them. But the average house purchase now is 133 days. 10 years ago, it was 84 days, which was still too damn much. I mean, it's a nightmare.
I just wonder whether we shouldn't be encouraging even more sort of licensed conveyancing companies rather than solicitors as such.
Who specialise just in property. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's some very good firms out there now, and there's some very shoddy
I
firms.
think the lenders themselves could fund that, couldn't they? And
Well,
set it
I mean,
up?
not being funny, the lenders themselves could do it all, to be quite
Yeah.
honest, all in-house. It wouldn't, you know, why do they need to go and do a valuation these days on a house?
Well,
To be honest with you.
we've
It's not
done a
necessary.
couple of remortgages
Yeah.
with the same lender.
Yeah.
So not even remortgages, they're
No.
product transfers. Lenders insisting on solicitors being involved. All right, they're funding it.
Yeah.
But
It's not
again, it's a
necessary.
delay.
It's all been on the land registry.
Yeah.
It's all. It's like valuations. Why do they need to go and value it? They can do it all from their desk.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay, well, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break, and we'll be asking Milesh and John more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and I'm with Milesh Lakhani and John Howard. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Milesh, I have a fairly small portfolio of buy-to-let properties. I have it in mind to expand the number, but I am concerned about the onward management and control. Do the experts think there is an optimum number of properties in a portfolio run by a private landlord before having to employ professional assistance?
Short answer, no. I think it really depends on individual situation. So where are the properties located compared to where you're located? You know, are there any agents out there that you could have a chat with? What specific tasks is it that you're finding pain with? Is it viewings? Is it check-ins, check-outs? Because you could outsource bits of the process whilst having some control, or you just go fully managed and then manage the managing agent. And through experience, that is a key point. Never assume that you pay an agent full management and your property's taken care of. In my experience, it doesn't happen.
There are huge limitations to that, aren't there?
You've got to know your detail, because ultimately, as a landlord, you're the one that's on the hook. So you've got to manage that relationship and make sure that you're getting absolute clarity and things done the way you want them done with your fully managed letting agent.
Yes. I mean, it's an interesting legal point, isn't it? How much by having a managing agent alleviates you from responsibility, and I don't think it does.
No, I don't think it does, but I do think you've been a bit harsh there, because I think there's a lot of very good property managing agents, and I don't think they charge very much for the job they do. What I would say is, what I do find with a lot of them is they're not prepared to push the rents up hard enough. They want an easy life.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And we're constantly putting rents up at the moment, every 6 months, year, and they don't want to.
difficult conversation, I guess, isn't it?
Not that difficult. I just tell them.
From their point of view.
Have
I mean,
either
from an
of
agent.
you had experience of these sort of one-stop maintenance services? I mean, I can think of one with a red telephone where they say
Yeah.
subscribe here and we handle all the problems. Do they handle all the problems? Is it that easy?
From what we do, our properties are remote, and so we do rely on letting agents and whatever. However, I do have my own contacts from when I was doing refurbs and purchasing, so I've got a fallback. So if I look
Yeah.
at something that comes in, okay, we need to do a fire alarm test and it's coming at 500 quid, you know, I know a couple of people that I can pick up the phone to and say, reasonable or not? And that's the sort of things you've just got to be
Yeah, that's a
aware
good
of and
idea.
just have your wits about you,
Yeah.
because you're remote. And
Yeah.
it's not as easy as just driving around there, taking a few people around and getting better quotes. So we've not gone down that route of whatever. The agents have their own management system for issues where they might have a hotline or an email address or whatever. But yeah, from our point of view, we've not directly got involved with it.
What about you, John?
You know, we've got portfolio all over the UK, from Scotland to Wales and all over. So we tend to use local managing agents to do it all. If we think something's very expensive, this is £500 to do this, and I look at it and go, I don't get too involved, to be fair. Someone else looks at it, I'm a bit spoiled, and thinks, well, that's a lot of money. Then we might try and go out locally and source it, but it's very difficult if you're in based.
In that sort of situation, do you have to give that local agent a sort of authority up to so many hundreds of
normally
pounds?
£500 we do. But I mean, you know, they've all got their pet maintenance companies, and I'm not saying that they all earn a commission out of it, but you would expect some of them probably do.
Yeah.
So you've got to be smart about it. But of course, it all goes back to the condition of the property in the first place. If you refurbish it correctly in the first place, then you get a lot less issues.
So true.
You know, later on, it's worth spending a bit more getting it right, because you're in control of that. You're not in control once the property management company's got it, really.
I think the only other thing to add, as far as the question goes, is so we've got a reasonable HMO portfolio. Went through the motions of actually, God, is that how much I'm paying my letting agent? I could do this myself.
How did that work out?
So, well, looked into it, looked at two people rather than one, because if one goes off sick, blah, blah, blah. And then it dawned on me that actually I didn't set out to become a letting agent. And so we decided against it, fortunately.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I just let the professionals do it, I think.
Well, I think it stops you doing other things.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
For me, I'm looking at deals every day, trying to find deals every day. If I'm messing around with management companies,
Day to
I'm
day.
not doing that, am I?
Okay, well, we seem pretty well in accord on that one, don't we?
I think we do, for change, yeah.
There we are. Okay, John, your question. I've recently been granted planning consent for a 15-storey block of flats. The authority insisted the ground floor had retail and commercial service properties, while the floors above were purely residential. However, I've had conversations with my favoured mortgage provider, and he has suggested many lenders will not want to approve residential mortgages where there are commercial units below. Have the experts a view on this?
I certainly do, because you know, we've done a few tower blocks over the years, and we're just about to get planning on a 12-storey block in Birmingham, where there's commercial on the ground floor. So the reason there's commercial on the ground floor of these blocks, sometimes it's because of flooding, because it's in a flood zone and you can't get, you know, they wouldn't allow residential on the ground floor. Sometimes it's just because these councils are bloody minded, in my view. There's so many of these tower blocks, and I've got one in Ipswich at the moment. I've got 3 empty commercial units on the ground floor. And that's because, on the whole, there's no requirement for commercial, you know, there's no need for it, but they insist that you do it for whatever planning reason there is. So the answer is yes, and you're probably better answering this question than me, but at the end of the day, you can get mortgages above commercial, but they cost more money and it's more difficult, and depending on the commercial that's underneath. So if you've got a takeaway underneath, good luck. If you've got a furniture store or something like that, it's certainly a lot easier. Would that be a fair? Have I done?
Yeah, I think.
Was that okay?
Yeah, I'll give you
Thank
9.5
you.
out of 10
Thank you.
there. I think yes, there are lenders who will lend above commercial, but as the developer, be really, really clear on who they are, what their product offering is, and make sure that you're upfront with the potential buyers of your units of that situation, because the last thing you want is to not say anything, get to a point where in legals, and then all of a sudden it blows up and the sale goes away. So yes, there are lenders that do it, albeit less than the wider market, but it can be done. Might be a little bit more expensive, but what we said before, lots is just buy right. Make sure you're factoring that into your numbers. And
but I'm presuming the council's logic is that you're providing infrastructure and amenities for the residents.
Well, you are, but I mean, it's you see so many blocks with the vacant commercial underneath that is in an auction or whatever.
Just look out of the window.
Well, there you go. It's bonkers. One quick trick that sometimes we use is that we covenant the ground floor to say that it can't be a restaurant or takeaway, because that gives people the confidence then to buy on the first floor.
Yes.
So, okay, you might be restricting a tenant, what tenants you can get from the ground floor. But of course, the upside of that is that you're selling much easier upstairs. It's people more confident about it. So that's what we've done in the past. So that's a quick bit of advice.
I think one of the difficulties is, so many years since I've done it now, John, but is it Class D, which is sort of...
office?
Well, no, sort of amenity space.
Yes.
Where fine, you can have a nursery or a charity or whatever else. It's so hard to
don't want
let.
a nursery because they're too noisy, and they need a nursery needs so much outside space that's safe.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one, but it'd be too noisy.
Yeah.
You won't be able to sleep.
I had trouble with one down here. They wanted a nursery in there. Of course, then the outside space, you're then giving people rights of way over common areas.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
And so people say, I don't really want to pass, 50 kids playing outside.
Well, also dropping off in the mornings, picking up. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I mean, that is difficult because, I remember having that conversation with the council here, and they say, listen, the last thing we want is a queue of mums in 4x4s outside here in the street. So very difficult. Is there any other reason that the sort of mortgage providers don't like it? Is it a fire risk, perhaps?
I think certainly for the takeaways in restaurants, definitely.
Saleability, really. Long-term saleability. And it's an excuse to charge more interest.
It's just increased risk because there's a business operating underneath. Therefore, there's an increased risk on their security, which is above
noise,
it.
all these other
that's
because again, this nursery down here had got its own kitchen, its own bakery, its own. It's quite a complex subject, isn't it? Really, but difficult for a developer.
Well, they all we put most of the ground floors space we put in at nothing, because if you finish it to a shell finish, then no tenant these days will take it shell finish, which is just literally a shell, and refurbish it themselves. They want you to do that, and that is so expensive to do. It's probably £100 a foot to fit it out.
Yes.
So in the end, you make no money out of doing it. Literally, you might as well leave it empty.
It's back to due diligence right at the start. Factory.
Well, it's the same as one of the blocks down here, residential blocks. TfL were insisting, I think they wanted spaces for 800 bikes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure could find 800 bikes in Canary Wharf.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. We built a new stand at Cambridge United when I was a director there, and we had to have 420 bike spaces. I think we had 12 people turn up with bikes at games. We didn't have that many people turn up to watch, to be honest with you. And we had to 428, cycle spaces. It's just ridiculous, crazy.
Okay, well, I think we'll have to leave the vagrancies of our planning rules to another and specific programme. So I'm going to say a big thank you to Milesh Lakhani for coming in today, CEO of Revive Property, and John Howard, property developer. Thank you very much for coming in.
It's a pleasure,
again, John.
as always.
Good to see you both.
Thank you.
I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.